As you can see down the middle of the slide, there are 6 phases listed: build profits, project by project, business development, bidding, pre-construction, construction, and post. What we're doing, and underneath each of those is a list of several business processes. On the right, you can see an infographic of the same thing, and the red circle indicates the part we're talking about today. The business process, each business process covers the basics of that process, kind of the 101 of the process, best practices, tips, things to watch out for, and solutions for that process. So this webcast series is put on by Sage Construction Group, and we're looking at sub-prequal today. My name is Phil Bride, and Brandon Houston is here too from Sage, and he'll share with you solutions for sub-prequal after I go through the best practices session. So welcome, and let's jump into it. Today we'll be covering the 5 prequal themes: financials, payments, experience, current workload, safety records, and then we'll also cover the 3 C's of bonding. And the 3 C's of prequalification was established by bonding companies, and they cover things like capital, character, capacity. So it's a different variation of the 5 prequal themes, very similar, but it's something that bonding and insurance companies pay attention to and the perspective they look at it from. Then typical questions and a good list of question topics for prequalification, sub-prequal. Then we'll wrap up my section of it with prequal financials and red flags that can come up during the prequal and what to do about it. So let's go through the 5 sub-prequal themes. The first one is financials. And financials are really all about financial strength, stability, whether they have solid banking relationships or not, healthy financial statements, the income statement, cash flow, balance sheet, and whether they know what it really means to have these financial statements and how to use them for the business. The second theme is payment and legal history. And that means, do they have a good credit history? Do they have a line of credit big enough to handle the job? Maybe you're moving into a bigger job this time, and maybe you've got 2 jobs in separate locations that you're really trying to nail down, and you need to know that the subcontractor is able to handle that. And then experience in meeting contract obligations. Do they show up on the job site when expected? Do they show up on time with the right equipment, with the right expertise? The third is experience, and this is pretty much what we tend to think of when we talk about subcontractors anyway, and that is, do they have the capacity to actually perform the work? Can they get it done? Do they have a customer history of their performance and job types? Will people step up and talk about how well they did and what kind of work they're doing for the job or on the job? Then part of the experience is, what is their organizational structure? Do they have an organizational structure that can handle the size of job and the multiple jobs that you may be putting out to bid? And then the other part of experience, which is probably some of the most important thing, unless you're just got really small subs and just very few jobs that you're working on, and this is, if you've got a lot of big stuff happening, is the good character and leadership skills of the key players, of the subcontractors. And the leadership skills is something where sustainability of the company itself, not necessarily environmental sustainability, but sustainability of the company plays a key role. Fourth is current workload. What's their situation with their WIP? Do they know how to manage WIP and over-under billing? Do they even know what it is? And do they have continuation plans, or are they just thinking job to job, bid to bid? And then, of course, Do they have the equipment necessary to carry out the job? And the people is a big deal. Getting the right people on the right jobs at the right time. And do they have that to carry out the jobs that they're bidding on? The last one is safety records. And what are their violations, citations, judgments against or for them? And their OSHA DART rate. And DART, if you're not familiar with it, is days away, restrictions, and transfers. And OSHA tracks that. So a lot of larger owners and public projects require DART rates of a certain value or less. And it's also tracked by bonding and insurance companies, and of course, sometimes the owners. So sureties and prequal companies use the 3 C's of prequal. So it takes that same list I just talked about and reorders it, but with a different emphasis. And it's really aimed at getting bigger and more robust bonds and insurance for the next level of jobs. And of course, it starts with capital. The financial reports have to be in place. Working capital has to be strong enough to handle the jobs for the larger bonds. And the debt structure has to be in, debt structure is a big deal. Are they managing their debt structure, and are they on top of it? And then, of course, cash flow. And cash flow is tied so tightly to the WIP and over-under billing, it's ridiculous. Then lender relationships. Do they have relationships with banks, multiple banks and multiple lenders to handle bigger jobs to get things in place before the billing and collection, and more importantly, the collection happens? And then net worth is a big part of this whole capital structure as well. Capacity is pretty straightforward, and that's the capacity of the organization. But part of capacity is also their organizational structure. Do they have the project managers trained and in place, soups trained and in place, and know exactly what to do and how the process works for multiple jobs, and just know their job really well? Part of this is how is their past performance and experience, what kind of work systems do they have in place, and what do their schedules look like? Are they like accepting things beyond their capacity or not? The last piece of this is character, and character of the people in charge. Character really has to do with their ability to run a company. The leadership skills, business leadership skills, people leadership skills, business process leadership skills, all the things that make a company successful. So what kind of relationships do they have with vendors, other subs that they may be on the job with, other GCs, their credit history, and any legal filings that they have against them? This is an interesting part of it. I was just reading about Nike world headquarters here in Beaverton, Oregon, and the problems. There's a lot of subcontractors are filing lawsuits against the general contractor and Nike because of change orders, which no big surprise. A lot of change orders, and they don't want to pay for it. And schedule changes, and of course the schedule changes are tightening up schedules, which means OT, overtime, more expenses, more changes, not paying for overtime and change orders, hence lawsuits. So there's so that's more an issue on the owner and GC side, sounds like, at least from the press. But with a GC, that can happen on the subcontractor side as well, just how well they run things. So this tells a lot about how well the company is run. Are they in it as a business, or are they in it just with a view of project to project? Big difference between those two. And then surety and insurance companies want to know, and it's a good basis to watch for yourself as well. Okay, so sureties often find follow these 3 C's in their series of questions, striving to understand if the company has these things listed down the middle of the slide. Good references, ability to meet contract obligations, can they meet the job requirements, and all that stuff that you see right there. So your best most reliable subs will have all this information. And it's good to know, and if they're on top of it, and be willing to get it together and provide it. If they don't have it ready, are they willing and able to get it together and provide it to you? Very important aspect of the prequal side of things. Here is a list of the sub-prequal topics. So if you go through sub-prequal questionnaires, you might find them online, you might talk to bigger GCs, or maybe you have something in place already. Generally, they follow this list of topics, and they go to various levels of depth underneath each topic, and sometimes they don't even cover one or more of the topics. But this is a good place to drive a stake in the ground and start, especially if you don't have any pre-qual questions in place. So the first is just general company information. And this is a lot like just filling out a job application. It's like, who are you, and what's all your contact information, what are the key things about your company and you. So things like the name of the company, the address, the accounting contact, the managerial contact, what insurance and bonds you have in place, the EIN, the tax ID, what banks you bank with, key pieces of information about the company. Second part of this is how the company is legally organized. Who are the owners of the company, and what's the state of the organization? Every once in a while you come across companies, maybe not so much on smaller subcontractors, but on bigger subcontractors and even vendors, you'll come across companies that are organized in a different state than where they do the bulk of their business. Interesting thing that happens, especially with corporations, S Corps and C Corps. The next is references of similar jobs. So, of course, you want the subcontractor references, other generals that they may have worked for, and other jobs that they may have done. How well did they do the work? A lot of times you can also get references from banks and bonding companies with all the information that they collected from the subs. What licenses might be required for the jobs may be required by the owners and local jurisdictions. There might be different requirements depending on the jurisdiction you're in, as far as licenses and certifications and insurance and all that good stuff. And so it's good to know what they have in place so that you can measure that against what's required for your jobs. If you want to, a lot of times, prequalification includes getting a list of all the projects over the last 3 years that a sub has done. The description, length of time they were on the project, number of workers, any lawsuits and judgments they had against them during that project, their DART rates, things like that. And then moving up more currently, what's the backlog the company has on the books, including their current WIP and what do they have for WIP, work in progress. Of course, the financials and commitments, and here's the big piece, and then we'll talk about this in a few minutes also under red flags, and that is what kind of equity do they have in the current projects, and that it might include dividends being paid out and billings that are ongoing. So a most recent audited financial statement is very important for you to be able to see and have access to, especially if you're worried or concerned or it's a big risky project. The last 3 years' sales volumes and this year's estimated sales volume, and of course a list of all current projects. So you can go as deep on this as you need to, or as shallow. This is a judgment call you have to make for your prequal process. The next piece is an interesting one, and that at the top of the right-hand side of the slide, and that is, are there sustainability programs in place? Sustainability, a lot of times we think in terms of community engagement programs, maybe, but more importantly is, do they have trade training programs in place to make sure they're on top of things? And then, of course, there's the rating systems like the LEED V4 experience rating, the Green Globes, stuff like that. But now here's an interesting twist that's started to become more important in the last year, 2 years, and that is the efficiency strategies and waste strategies. Here in Oregon, there's laws being passed such that when you go through and do a demo on a project for a remodel, especially, or are getting rid of any kind of waste on a site, from a site, it has to be certified, going to a certification agency, get it certified, and this includes even small residentials, all the way up to large commercial, certified that it's asbestos-free and lead-free. Otherwise, you're not allowed to dump it. You'd have to take it to a certification place and then take it to a special dump if it's got lead or asbestos in it. So those are becoming more important now. There's fees and penalties starting to be imposed. At least here in Oregon there is, and you'd have to check in your local jurisdiction about your stuff. The DART rate is an important piece of this, and that stands for, I skipped one, sorry, the safety and health, the OSHA 300 log information. And by the way, OSHA is looking more closely at job sites, and they continue to look more closely at them and watch stuff, and fines are increasing. The last one is the DART rate, and that stands for days away restrictions transfers. And that's, I'm not going to dive into that here, but it can be an important thing for some owners and especially public, and it might be something to just track if they watch it, maybe not go into it in detail, but at least if you don't watch it, at least you know it's a possibility to dive into it. This next slide is some additional prequal topics that are not usual on a lot of prequal questionnaires, but can be if it becomes important to you or if you do any kind of public projects. The first one is the workers' comp experience modifier. This really has to do with how much you pay for your premium, whether you pay more than the normal premium or less than the normal premium. So the experience modifier is a number. 1 represents the industry average of claims for workers' comp. If you're higher than the industry average, you pay a higher premium. If you're less, you pay a lesser premium. And if you pay a higher premium, that means you have more claims, more injuries on job sites than the industry average for your type of sub and job. And that's something to watch. Of course, that got put in place summer of 2012, and it's continuing to have an effect today. Owners may vary in what their expectations for the modifier is, and it's best to know it and have it on hand if it comes up. The next topic is interesting. It's AM Best Company. If you're not familiar with them, they watch insurance companies, not contractors and subs, but the insurance companies themselves, and rate them directly. And some owners require an AM Best Company rating of your insurance company, so you may have to change insurance companies to do a specific job. So it's something to just know about, understand. Let's get into this is my last slide before I hand it off. But here's a couple of red flags that can pop up during the pre-qual process. Keep in mind that they're not necessarily showstoppers, but something to ask more questions about. So the first one is too much of a subcontractor's equity committed to a single project or single GC. That means their cash and success rises and falls with the single project focus. This could be just they're very short-sighted and they're just moving project to project, but it could also mean that they're not running their business well also. Second thing is watch out for excessive dividends taken out by the owners. They could be cashing out, and back in the day, a lot of GCs and subs would cash out early and run. I haven't heard of too much of that happening these days, and that's probably why we have all the rules and regs in place now. More than likely, they're just simply not running their business side of things well, and they think they've got more money than they do, and then bills are coming up right around the corner. So you should know how well they're running their company. Maybe, a third one is maybe they're doing early significant billings on a project that aren't accounted for, and these would show up on their balance sheet. Could indicate the sub has to use the money immediately to cover costs on another project, also indicating poor business management practices. These are all red flags for you to come in and say, hey, you know, you might need to ask some questions, and if it shows bad business practices, help them get their act together as far as running their business. They might be excellent at their trade, but not so good at running a business. And running a business is important for you to get your jobs done on time and the next job going. And it's part of the pre-qual process. Okay, so with that, I'd like to pass it off. It says Scott Reeders here, but it's actually Brandon Houston from Sage Construction, and he'll talk about some of the solutions related to these best practices we just talked about. Brandon, I'm going to pass control over to you.
Sounds good.
And if I can, yes, okay.
All right, guys.
So you should have it now.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. So, guys, my portion is just to show you in our actual bid management tool some of the things Phil was talking about today, because, I mean, when you are looking at qualifying new subs, really two things are very important. One, quality of work, and two is price and availability. Kind of three there lumped into two. But we have a couple ways to really keep good track of what our subs are doing. So I'm in the bid management tool right now, and I'm going to go to Setup. Now, down in Setup, we have the ability to evaluate all of our subs, even our existing subs, because one of the things we have the ability to do when setting up the bid management software is we have the ability to integrate your address book or contact list of subs. Now, the nice thing about this evaluation setup is it's customizable. I mean, we have 5-point system here. You can have a 3-point. You can have a 10-point. You notice here where it says we can add various categories, or if we need to have subcategories in here, I mean, it's completely customizable and flexible. And you notice how the initial template is set up pretty well. And we even have a pre-construction section for you. But we have the ability really to just manage and evaluate any aspect of what our subs do. Now, the nice thing about the bid management tool as well, this carries over into projects that you guys are doing, and not just local. You know, a lot of times, at least 10 years ago, if you had, you know, a job 200-300 miles away, you went with your subs in your local area because you knew the work they did, their price, but you were paying either gas for windshield time, or you were putting them up in some type of hotel, food stipends, you know, which add on to extra costs of the job and essentially take away from your margin. Well, one of the things within bid management is, and you'll also notice here, and I want to point out, when you're setting your subs up, we have a lot of different information we can add. And I want to point out this field right here. So these certifieds, if we check these are little shortcuts, and I'm going to show you where those come in handy right after this. But if I have a job, you know, that's 200-300 miles away, right down here where it says, hey, select your state or zip code, I have access to 50,000 subcontractors that are a part of the bid management software network. And the nice thing is I can go in and you get a list of those subcontractors, and you can go in and look at how they're evaluated. I mean, that's part of setting up that evaluation process. You can go in and see the type of work they do, you know, see also when I get into these check marks, if I go in and look at just a current project that I have going or something, and I need to get a quick overview. Sorry about this, Phil. I had it set up and it timed out on me. But down here, if I were to look, whether it's in my own bid, but also you can see based on how I have them set up and evaluated, you know, when we're looking at them, there's little notes saying, okay, they're pre-qualified, they have an A rating, their safety, it's a B. Okay, financially, they're an A. You're not going to have to worry about if the company has to provide materials. So really, those are quick options when, you know, evaluating the current subs we have, or if I need to go find a sub that is in a different state, county, what have you. So, Phil, I am going to pass it back to you, sir.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
I think I've got it.
Yeah, you just take it. Sorry.
Okay. So thanks, Brandon, for showing that. By the way, it says Scott Readers on the slide, but it's really, you just heard from Brandon Hewson, and so that from Sage, and showing what the product at Sage can do for helping with the pre-qual process. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending this webcast. We're going to wrap up here, and which is one of 3 webcasts in the series on managing subs. So it's sub pre-qual, sub compliance, and project management in this series. My name is Phil Bride, and I'm a business consultant. I work with companies and contractors, others, to help them get the business processes in place. And then Brandon represents Sage for solutions. So we will have a recording of this webcast available to all attendees. And thanks again for taking time out of your busy day. If you have questions, send an email to phil@philbride.com or brandon.hewson, H-U-S-O-N, @sage.com, or just the CRE sales@sage.com. And we'll get answers back to you. In the meantime, I'm going to hang on for a couple of minutes in case people want to post questions in the chat, and we'll try to address them. Thanks again. Have a great day. Anything you'd like to say, Brandon?
No, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Perfect. I don't see any questions coming in, so it looks like we're good.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, there is a.
Nope.
Let's see. A chat question did come in. If I can find it now. Where'd it go? Label them as LR timesheet. That way they can just go. So Brandon, are you still there, Brandon?
Yes.
Mentioned a database of 50,000 subs. How does that list get populated and updated?
So how it's updated is when the first job you do using the bid management tool, once you get your specs and everything dialed in for the job, you're going to shoot out an email to the specific subs you picked in your address book. Now, when those subs get that email, they're going to have to do what we do every day. That's create, accept it, create a login, password, and as they're going through that setup process, they have the ability to say, yes, I want to be a part of this database, or no. And in some cases, you're going to have subs that, hey, they have been around a long time, they have their GCs they work with, and that's enough work. You'll have others that, yeah, you know what, we want to grow, we want to get more work. But also, they have the ability, if they get pinged by a GC from out of town doing a job, you know, they have the ability to not accept it, or if they don't want to get those, they can actually later on take themselves out of that database. But as far as the database being updated, that really falls upon the subs initially. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, good. That looked like the only question. So, okay. I don't see any more questions coming through. I'm going to sign off. Oh, yep. He says, thank you. It did answer your question, his question. Okay,
Wonderful.
Brendan, thanks. Good job. And
all right, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.